Thank you so much, Elwyn. If I'm on the floor, things are going to be really bad. So when I do hit the floor, you'll know. Okay, right, here we go. So this is more or less the content of what we're going to go through this morning. I'm going to break down the wording child and youth care work into firstly talking about the children and youth that we serve, and then going to this professional care work that we do. And under that, we'll take a look at what we mean by professional and what professional care work is not and what professional care work is. So we can go to the next slide. Let's start with the children and youth that we serve. I think this is the place where we always should start. I also think that it is the place or the area that we should constantly be keeping in our minds as we do our work. If we are not actually thinking about the children and youth day in and day out, and I don't mean working with them, I mean thinking about them and being very mindful of who we're working for and with, then we lose things along the way, and it becomes about us or about other issues that are going on. And so the focus on the child and youth at the beginning of our name is absolutely critical. It also gives the message to people that that is our central focus as we do our work. Next. So I wanted to start with a statement by Jim Anglin, who actually, if you look at this, made this statement just at the end of our transformation process in South Africa. And I just thought this is a wonderful way for us to focus in on children and youth and hear what he has to say also about how that relates to the work that we do. So throughout the long history of societies internationally, the realities and voices of children have not traditionally been seen or heard. We have learned that where the needs of children are not considered first, they tend to be addressed last, which often means not at all. In order to ensure a sustained focus on the day-to-day living realities of the whole child, the development of child and youth care education, training programs, and professional associations needs to be vigorously supported. Because at the very heart of child and youth care work is the willingness born of struggle, the knowledge born of experience, sensitivity born of vulnerability, and skill born of necessity, not just to act or advocate on behalf of children, but to truly live with young people as a profession. Next. All the young people that we serve have strengths. All have competencies. All are to some degree resilient. That is really important for us. But we have set that tone in South Africa for a very long time now, and that is where we put our focus. We understand that as we work with young people, however broken and hurting they come to us with strengths, with competencies, with resilience. We do not label them. We do not pathologize them. Unfortunately, in our country, we've reverted so much under the system that government runs. We so often hear these labels being passed around, and it gives justification to people to actually treat children extremely badly. But in our profession, we are not meant to label, and we are not meant to be pathologizing children. We do, however, recognize that they have challenges. We do recognize that they are in emotional and social pain. And we do recognize that their needs are often go unmet. Next. So the young people that we serve they hurt inside. We don't serve children who are happy, having a wonderful time in their life, have secure families, and are just so well and doing fantastically well. The young people that we serve hurt inside, and I'm going to now ask that the person who's doing the slide just move along one at a time. They may hurt themselves and or others. They may hate themselves. Keep going. They may want to die. They may hate other young people. They may hate adults. They may be a drug addict. They may be reluctant to trust and form relationships. They may be sad or lonely or angry or distressed. They may have mental health issues. They may be bullied. They may be a bully. They may be terrified. They may have no adults who care about them. They may be an orphan. They may be in trouble with the law. They may have been sexually abused. They may have been physically abused or emotionally abused. And they may have witnessed violence in their home or community or both. Or they may have many of these together. Next slide. You can just go one at a time through these. These are the children we serve. They bleed inside. And I'm going to come back to that concept. Can you go slower? These are the children that we serve. No, keep going. Next slide. Next, just hit again. This child bleeds inside. Please just keep going. These young people bleed inside. These young people bleed inside. These young people bleed inside. And these young people bleed inside. The children that we serve are in pain. They don't necessarily show that on the outside by sobbing and crying and telling us they're in pain. They do it through their behavior. They do it through such things as withdrawing or hurting themselves, or simply not being available to any relationships. But they hurt inside. And I want you to keep that in mind as we now go to what the second part is, and that is, what is the work that we do? Professional care work with children and youth is what we do. And sometimes we get a little bit embarrassed, I think. In fact, I heard somebody say just the other day that maybe we should look at that word care and figure out something different. And I want to say to all of us, that is a powerful, powerful word that sits in the middle of our title. And it's misunderstood by many, many people because they associate it with things that are very different to the work that we do. So that is why we add on the work. We talk about care work because we do care about children and we do care for children, but we do care work, and that is the professional component of what we do. Next. This is the area of expertise that gives meaning to our job title. This is what Dr. Lorraine Fox said, one of the most amazing, powerful leaders in the field of child and youth care work. Next slide. So what do we mean by professional? And now you can go to the next slide and slowly go through point by point with me, please. Being professional and professionalization are two different things. And I really want us to understand that, because we are, I think in our country, I don't know how it is in other countries, but we're getting a little bit confused about whether we are professional or not professional. And that's because within the professionalization process, which links back to the Council for Social Service Professions in our country, there are two different categories of child and youth care workers. And so we get a little bit confused about all of this. Today, I want to say to you that our focus is on being professionals. So when I talk about professional child and youth care work, it applies to all of us. Next slide. So what is being professional? It means that we demonstrate our commitment to children and youth who are hurting and vulnerable. Keep going. It means demonstrating our knowledge of and commitment to lawful and ethical child and youth care work practice. I want to just stay on that one for a minute. Since coming back into my own country, I have been exposed to secure care in more ways than I would want. I actually was participating too in the international study of children deprived of liberty, which, by the way, now includes all children in residential care. And that was bad enough as I studied what was going on around the world in child and youth care work within residential centers. And I thought, oh gosh, this is absolutely terrible. It was a very hard study to participate in. And I thought, gee, we've made such great changes and things are going so well. And I came then to be part of a study or a investigation into secure care in our country. And after visiting 32 secure care centers, I felt as if I was back in 1996. The unethical, unlawful child and youth care work practice, and might I add, social work practice in secure care in our country is nothing other than disgusting. Children are at risk and are being badly hurt. That, of course, does not mean everybody is doing that, but the system is set up to hurt children, and the system, as well as practitioners who are meant to be ethically and lawfully practicing, are hurting children. It must stop. Next point. We need to demonstrate our child and youth care work values and principles. Next, just keep going now. Demonstrating our ability to work well with other professionals and different organizations. We need to be able to articulate what we do as a child and youth care worker. I remember Brian Gannon, my mentor from many, many years ago, and the founder of NACCW, who said, if we can't articulate what we do as child and youth care workers, we don't know what we're doing. And neither can anybody else know what we're doing. They can't simply just get it by taking a look at our title. demonstrating appropriate knowledge and expertise in child and youth care work, demonstrating self-awareness and personal development, demonstrating respect for and the protection of the rights of children, demonstrating that we are competent and willing to work well with children and youth whom others may want to throw away, ignore, or lock away. Demonstrating that we respect and understand different cultures and ways of being and doing. Demonstrating that we can work in teams. And holding ourselves accountable to children and youth. Next slide. So now, what actually is care work? What is this thing that we do? This professional care work with children and youth. And I think once you switch that sentence around from child and youth care work to care work with children and youth, it helps us reframe a little bit and start to hone in on what care work is and what it is not. So first of all, I want to go with what it is not, because that helps us get away from some of the confusion. Our professional care work is not substitute parenting. It is not done just by anybody who cares about children. That is part of the reason why we have tried so hard to change. Hopefully, we who work in this field do care about children, and it is part of who we must be. But anybody can't do this. We don't pull somebody into this work off the street and say, come on in and do this work with children. We don't do childcare, which is actually basically early childhood development. We don't do youth work. We don't do community work. We don't watch children. Now, let me stop there for a minute. One of the things that I've seen happen, well, in the past and unfortunately happening right now, and this I think is more particular to residential care work with children, where child and youth care workers sit watching what children actually are doing. That is not child and youth care work. I'm not sure what to call it, but it isn't child and youth care work. We don't watch children do things and say, off you go, play a game of soccer, or off you go, do this, and I'll sit here and watch. I know when people are just watching children, because I can look at their clothing and see that some of them are sitting with 3-inch heels or even worse, high heels. And I know that they could never be participating with children in activities because they would be flat on their face before they knew what happened to them. We come to work ready to participate with children, so watching is not on. While I'm on this particular piece, and you've still got childcare, youth work, and community work up there, I also want to say to you that in part, we do little pieces of youth work, and no doubt we also have aspects of community work that we include. But we do not, our primary work is not youth work or community work, and definitely not childcare. Okay, let's go with the next one. We don't babysit children. Keep going. And lastly here, we are not preoccupied with behavior. This is going to come up again now, and I can't emphasize that enough. To me, it is fairly horrifying that we have come to a place, again, I'm probably referring more to residential settings, but possibly in other settings too, schools and so on, where our focus has shifted to what children are doing, their behavior, rather than the child themselves. And this is where I just love a statement by Michael Durant, who says that the problem is, no, please go back. The problem is the problem. The child is not the problem. And I think if we can keep that perspective and think about that, we can stop being preoccupied with behavior. And then lastly, the care, we don't do child care, except perhaps when we care for babies in residential care. Okay, and that is not child and youth care work. That may be that people who are in child and youth care work positions who are caring for babies, that's great. I mean, there's no criticism from my end on that, but that is not child and youth care work. We don't care for babies. All right, let's go on. And now comes a few shockers. Now, please only go on when I say so. We do not do life space work. One of the things that I think has created so much confusion for people who don't know their work well enough and don't know our work well enough, in the sense of other professions being able to understand what it is that we actually do. When we trot out this thing called life space work, when somebody says to me, and now I'm a social worker as well, but you know, social worker comes up to me and says, so what do you do as a child and youth care worker? And I say, life space work, in this vague hope that somebody will get it, that they will understand that. Well, the bad news here is that many people do life space work. But that is, if you are describing what we do as life space work, you have a problem. Okay, next piece, because this is where I think you, some people are probably in this state now. Okay, so if we don't do life space work, what do we do? Next slide. We work in the life space or the everyday life of children and youth. And what we do is professional child and youth care work within many different contexts, such as child and youth care centers, communities, families, schools, and secure care. We work in the life space and we do professional child and youth care work, and that's why we need to be able to articulate what care work is. So no more describing to people that we do life space work. Okay, next slide. Next shock, okay? And you can put up the little shock emoji. Because now I bet you there's even more people going like this. We do not do behavior management. Maybe 30 odd years and going back. So 30 years ago and going further back than that, we may very well have seen ourselves as doing behavior management. And we framed it in a really positive, good way to the best of our abilities. But I want to say to you now in 2025, if we are still considering that what we do is behavior management, we have not caught up with research. We have not caught up with what the essence of our work is. And we need to get rid of this component in our curriculum and in the work that we actually do. We have got child and youth care workers in our country whose sole focus has been forced to be behavior management. Social workers are very much to blame in residential centers as well. But that is also partly our fault because we've told them that that's what we do. And so we do have managers of centers and social workers who are basically saying to us, go back into your little unit or wherever you work and you make sure you manage these children's behavior. In other words, our job is to make them behave well, and that's it. Now, that's not what we initially intended in our field many years back, but it is now not appropriate for many reasons. Number one, we are misusing it, and it can be so easily misused. It can become behavior control. And in many settings in our country, in residential care work, it has become behavior control. It involves punishment, it involves behavior modification, etc., etc. And punishment, for example, and behavior modification are against the law in our country. And yet, we have turned behavior management into this. We have social workers telling us to actually do behavior management, behavior modification, and punish children in spite of the law in our country. And so that brings us back to that ethical thing. And where is it that we are doing the kind of things that we're doing under this whole business of behavior management? I think it's very serious. And so I would say to you, this is a piece that must come out of our repertoire. But there's a much more important reason that I say this. Next slide. And that is because children and youth are meant to do behavior management. We now have such amazing neuroscience research that we can draw on. And we know that adolescents, for example, who many of us work with, adolescence has shifted from 10 years old to 23 years old. We no longer talk about teenagers. We talk about adolescence. It starts earlier, it ends later. And the primary task of adolescence is self-regulation. We also know from our own practices that independence or responsibility, whatever you want to actually name this, is a need of every child. So it is not us who need to do behavior management. It is children and youth with whom we work who need to be able to manage their behavior. Otherwise, they have no shot at being able to move forward in their life in a healthy way. We control them, we take away all their power. It is very easy to control children. You can actually drug them, and some people do. You can lock them up, and some people do. You can smack them all over the place, and some people do. You can control children any way you want to. But if we try to control children, we actually disempower them and we undermine them. And that's another reason why behavior management becomes so abusive in so many situations. In child and youth care work, we use child and youth development strategies, and we teach young people how to be super skilled at doing behavior management. Next slide. Now, let's talk about what care work with children and youth is. This is the good part, guys. We've done all the nasty stuff now. We're going to do the good part. What care work with children and youth is. Right, next slide. Our care work is, firstly, next slide, based on theories and researched approaches. We do not thumbs up what we do. We do not make it up as we go along. We actually have to understand the basis on which we do our work. And as we go through these theories, you're going to see that some of them overlap with other professions, with social work, as well as with psychology, for example. But we use these theories to do our particular work. And so they become very important, and you're going to probably be shocked at how many we draw from. And we've added in more as we've gone along because we've been looking at research, which is what we should be doing. Our training that we first have is just wonderful, but after that, there's got to be continuous research. We've got to shift our practice according to what we are learning. If we're still doing what we started out doing 50 years ago, there's something not right. And I remember Brian Gannon again, what a lovely, lovely example he gave. He said, what would happen if you went to a dentist and they hadn't sharpened their drill for about 30 years, and they now are ready to drill into your tooth? How would you actually feel about that? We, he said, are the tools in child and youth care work. We don't bring other fancy dancy tools. We are the tool. It is us who come into this work, which is why it is so important for us to actually continue to learn and to continue to be supported. We are the tools. If we don't get sharpened as we go along, we're actually going to hurt children. So here are the theories. You can go through them quite quickly. Right. 14 there that I've listed, that to my mind are all important and to some degree contribute to our work. We don't necessarily take one and just keep going with it. We draw from quite a few, but we just need to make sure that we are not totally confused and we apply one theory one day and another theory the next day. But our work is based on theory and researched approaches, and we do not want to give the impression that we just arrive one day and we start this work after getting a qualification and we never learn anything more after that. So it's important. And it's important for other professionals to know that we also don't make this up as we go along. We know what we're doing. We base our work on theory and on research, and we are professional in the way we actually apply these. Okay, off we go. Next slide. Our care work is, keep going. Keep going. Therapeutic work and child and youth development work. Now, I put this butterfly up there, firstly, because I just think it just captures how beautiful our profession is, how absolutely exquisite it can be if we do it well. The other thing is that it's delicate. We don't approach children with a great big hammer. We approach children in a very intricate, complex, well thought out way. Now look at those wings and see how amazing they are with all those beautiful lines that contribute. There's little pieces, there's long pieces, there are black pieces and blue pieces, and they all come together in two sets of wings: the child and youth development wing and the therapeutic wing. And down the middle, keeping it all together, is, hit the button, please, relationship. Let's take a look at therapeutic work first. Now, I'm reasonably shocked to find that our scope of practice in South Africa is missing this component for whatever reason. And I'm saying very categorically to everybody today, our work has to have this component in it. We do therapeutic work. Why? Go back to the children that we've just talked about. Go back to the concept of them bleeding inside. We don't see that blood, but they bleed inside. Our work has to be therapeutic. Stay with me on the, no, please go back. Please just go back. All right. Just one thing at a time. Now, put that child back up, please. Okay. Now, just let's take a look at this young person. This is what I mean by therapeutic. It is a quick way of showing you the difference between, let's look at this kid and see that angry face, those eyebrows lifted, the eyes that look like any minute now he'd like to slap us through the jaw. Just look at this face and then start to move your eyes across the whole face. Look at his lips. Look at the scars. Look at the fact that he's potentially hasn't had water in the last day or two. Look deeper into those eyes and see that possibly what's in those eyes is not anger at all. Next, just hit the next button. This child is bleeding inside. This child that we work with needs therapeutic responses. And so instead of punishing him, hitting him, coming to some conclusion that he needs to be locked up or handled in a different way, this is what we do as child and youth care workers. Hit the button. That is therapeutic child and youth care work. Now, this is not literal. This is simply to give us the concept, because we wouldn't typically walk up to a child and do that unless that we had a very powerful, strong relationship. Next slide. These are some of the young people that we work with who are full of scratches. And it's really, really difficult to see that diamond. Next. We are there to ignore the scratches and to work with the hard-to-reach diamond. We polish diamonds in our job. We don't try to get rid of scratches. Next slide. Here are some of the therapeutic don'ts. And again, just keep on going slowly, but I'll take one point at a time, one point at a time. We don't do clinical work. So this is where we differ from some of the other professions. We don't do clinical work, not unless we are qualified at a very high level and have specifically studied clinical work. Secondly, we don't do office-based therapy and counseling. When you see a child and youth care worker sitting in an office and children all around trying to speak to them, then you just know that that person is not a child and youth care worker. There's something wrong. We don't do office-based therapy and counseling. Our little sphere of work is not an office. Yes, we have to do admin. So from time to time, we have to go into an office, but that's not where we are with children. Next one. We don't diagnose. Next one. We don't label. Next one. We don't fix young people. You know, we get stuck on that one where, and other people, again, like social workers, psychologists, may give us the impression that that's what they want us to do, or in fact, we may give the impression that that's what we're just great at. We're not, and we should not be, and we should not be trying it. Our job is not to fix children and try to get them to be perfect little human beings. It is troubling to see how much effort we can or do around the world put into trying to get rid of the problems rather than build the child up from within. We assume that because they have some things that are broken, that we've got to go about fixing it all. Well, firstly, we're not that powerful. And I think the idea that if we out to fix kids, we're actually putting ourselves in quite an arrogant position. In addition, we're assuming that we are just fantastic at this kind of thing. We can't fix young people, and we shouldn't be trying to do that. That is not our job as child and youth care workers. And you'll see that when we look at what we do. Okay, next thing. We don't punish or threaten. And the reason why I've got this up as therapeutic don'ts is, and this one in particular, the moment you start punishing in any form, and I'm not talking about beating children up or something awful, even just little punishments, or you threaten them with such things as, if you don't make your bed this morning, you won't actually be able to go on the trip that we've got planned, or you won't be able to do A, B, C, or D. We don't do that, not if we're therapeutic. We cannot be therapeutic and punish at the same time. That is stepping over an ethical line. If a child is my client and I am doing therapeutic work with them, it goes in the opposite direction if I punish or threaten them. Imagine if you went to a doctor and you had a broken arm and he said to you, "Good grief, what did you do?" And you say, "Well, I climbed up on a stool and I tried to fix something on the roof. Um, and it was a really small stool and I wasn't balanced properly. So I actually fell off and I broke my arm." And he says, "Well, that was really stupid thing to do. You could have gotten a bigger stool, you could have got that, whatever. Let me just break your other arm, and then you can really see and learn a lesson from what it feels like." Or he says, "Well, you know what? You broke your arm. You know, you chose not to stand on a proper stool. And so, no, I don't think that I'm actually going to help you at this point. I think what you need to do is suffer a little bit. And every time we punish a child or threaten a child, we are giving the message that it's okay to hurt them and that it's okay for them to fear us and do things out of fear. So we don't punish and threaten children ever. The moment you step over that line, you are no longer a professional. And here, might I just say too, if there are social workers listening to this, the same applies to you. In our country, again, in secure care, where you're meant to be the most therapeutic, we have social workers who, as part of a program, are indicating that children should receive certain punishments. I had a situation where I was teaching and there were social workers and child and youth care workers present. And I said to them, because I wanted to check just how much punishment is going on in their practice. And I said, how many days do you actually isolate children for? And one social worker, not a child and youth care worker, jumped up and said, 3 days. It was almost like a competition. 3 days we punish. We isolate children. And blow me down if another social worker doesn't jump up and say, oh, no, we do it for 7 days. And then I said to them, let me read the regulations to you. You may not isolate a child for more than 2 hours. And a therapist must be present with them in those 2 hours. Right, let's go to the next slide. Let's look at what therapeutic practice is. One at a time now. This one, we're going to spend a few minutes on this one because it is at the absolute core of therapeutic practice and child and youth care practice in any area that we work, in any context that we work. Our job is to respond to pain and needs. And our responses are meant to be compassionate. I think that word compassion should be like tattooed across our hearts, tattooed across our foreheads to understand that that is what we need to be expressing towards children. And our response has to be healing in nature. So here's where those of you who are very sensitive to language, close your ears. But when a child actually comes at us and we say, please, would you go and do whatever it is we say? And they say, fuck you. Our response is not like anybody else might do, yes, but our response is, how can I help? Because we should know that that is not coming from a place of just trying to be rude or trying to be disobedient. We know that children who respond to us like that are finding it difficult to say it differently. When we have someone, and Lorraine Fox expresses this, not necessarily in exactly the same way that I'm going to say it, but when the chair comes flying at us, because we are child and youth care workers, we dodge the chair and we say, let's go and chat, because I'm so interested in what's happened to you. That is different to now. Let me tell you, you will not use that word again. It is disrespectful of me, and for that you will not be going to the swimming lessons this afternoon, or whatever it is. When the chair comes flying and we say, you've broken government property, that means you're going to be in isolation for the next 3 days. We are not being child and youth care workers. This is the hardest part of our job, to respond to the blood inside. You know, another nice example, or at least an example, whether it's nice or not, I'm not sure, that we can use is if you had somebody come into the emergency unit of a hospital and they were bleeding and the blood was falling on the floor, and a nurse came along and said, hey, you're bleeding on the floor. I just cleaned that floor a few hours ago. Now here's a cloth and you clean up that floor. You don't spill blood on my floor. It would be bizarre. And no doubt that person would not be a nurse the day after that. Right? But we do that sometimes to young people, because instead of seeing the blood inside, instead of understanding pain inside, we just react to the behavior and we get really upset because it has miffed us, it has disregarded us, it has disrespected us. That is not our job. Our job is to respond to the child. The problem is the problem. The child is not the problem. Next one. Oh, and sorry, before, yeah, it doesn't matter. You can put that up. Another example, a lovely example of responding and just making something into a non-issue, which is what we should be really great at doing, is here comes a school principal. And this is a real example. This actually happened. And a child is walking towards him and drops a piece of paper on the grass. And the principal says, please pick up that piece of paper. And the child says, fuck you. And the principal responds with, that will be fuck you, sir. And suddenly the child is in a different space. The principal has turned this in to, you know what, if you're going to speak to me like that, you're going to just be a little bit more respectful. And the child bends down and picks up the paper. Now, at a later stage, you can sit that kid down and you can have that chat about language. Why? Because the relationship is still intact. And we work in the context of relationship. And whatever we do, we need to protect that relationship. It keeps those wings together. It is the body of the whole. So we don't break relationship. And if we react to the behavior on the outside, we will end up breaking relationships. And then it takes a long time to get the trust and respect with that child again. Secondly, we understand behavior as communication. See, we do need to focus on behavior because most often it's right in our face. But instead of looking at it as behavior that's unacceptable and not acceptable or wonderful or whatever it is, we need to understand that it is a form of communication. The child who uses that language at us is sending us a message. What we need to understand and be able to decode is what is the message underneath that language. So we listen to behavior. And I just want you to look at that and hear that for a minute. We listen to behavior as well as words. And if you listen to behavior as a child and youth care worker, you will be able to respond. Next one. We are deeply aware and respectful of context and culture, so that together we can make sense of difficult situations, challenging behaviors, and the painful experience of young people. Context changes behavior. Context gives meaning. Culture changes context. Culture gives meaning. If we don't pay respectful attention to context and culture, we can make a huge mistake. And in our country, and probably everywhere else in the world, and certainly in Canada, where I spent some time, cultures are different. Contexts are different. And unless we can understand, we actually end up hurting human beings. And we've seen that all around the world. Let's not make it part of what we do. We live in a most amazingly rich country in terms of culture, and we need to pay attention. We need to be very careful of overlaying white culture on top of everybody else's culture. Unfortunately, some of our education systems do exactly that. And so in some ways we haven't even had the opportunity to figure out that we can do our work in this absolutely amazing way if we understand the culture we're working with and the context in which we are working. Now I'm going to take a really white example of context, forgive me, but this thing like rugby, okay, I don't know how many of you here love rugby, watch rugby, or have rugby in your country, but when you watch rugby, you take a look at the behavior of those men, and now women are participating in rugby as well. You take a look at the behavior where those adults jump on top of each other, tackle each other, hit them to the ground, tread on them with boots that have got spikes in them, pull down their pants as they sit in the scrum, etc., all in this effort to win this game. And it's behavior that we shout, we say, go, this is wonderful, yes, go, 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 go. And we think it's just glorious, okay, especially if it's our team. Now, if you saw that same behavior in the middle of the street on Monday morning, it's a totally different reaction. We call the police. Because context gives different meaning to behavior. So we pay attention so that we can make sense, as Tom Garfat has often expressed it as making meaning. We make meaning together with a young person so that we can truly understand and that they can understand and make sense of this experience. Okay, next one. We function within the context of a trusting and respectful relationship, which we don't break ever. We hang out and we hang in with children. With children, we feel comfortable being with children. We hang out with them. That doesn't mean we have to do the things that they do, but we hang out with them and we hang in with them, which means we don't give up on any child ever. And hanging out also speaks to the idea of participation. Our work is participatory. We don't stand on the sidelines and cheer them on. We participate in work with them. We participate in activities with them. So we hang out with them. We have fun with them and we hang in there no matter what. They need to know that someone in this world is not going to let them down, is going to be there with them for everything. Next one. We are therapists on the go. We move. We're with children. And we use any opportunity that we have to enable young people to heal. So we're involved in the lives of children and youth. We're working with them on their pain as they allow us to hold that pain with them. If you were to put your hands together and imagine the most beautiful, amazing, shining, delicate thing that is put into your hands. And if you open your hands and drop it, you will smash it to pieces. When a young person has developed the trust with us and they say, here, you can hold our pain. You can hold my pain with me. It is the most amazing gift that they give to us, and we dare not open our hands and drop them. Drop that pain, let go of it, and not understand it. We work with that as we go. So when we know a child is struggling and they end up in the middle of a fight, our job might very well be to calm those kids down and so on. But in the middle of that, we are also responding to the child's pain. We're being able to counsel them in the moment, right? We don't take them off to the office to have a speech with them. We give them guidance and support right in the moment, in the middle of that situation. Okay, on we go. We do crisis intervention when and if needed, and I don't think I need to explain that. Hopefully everybody knows what crisis intervention is, and it comes with a number of skills. Okay, next one. We build and sustain a therapeutic environment wherever we practice. Obviously, this is very important in a residential setting, but it's just as important in a small unit. It's just as important if we're working in a school. It's just as important if we're working in community. We create a small environment around us and around the child and their family, in whatever situation we are working, and we create a therapeutic environment. And this is how we do it. There are 4 things that we make sure of, and we can put all 4 of those up. Please. We ensure social care and safety. We ensure emotional care and safety. We ensure cultural care and safety. Now, that might look incredibly simple, that ain't simple. That takes skill and knowledge to carefully make sure that children's relationships are being protected and supported. That's social care, and that they're safe in terms of the people they have around them. We want to protect their emotions. We want to make sure that they don't, for example, get out of control in terms of their emotions, because that can hurt and damage them. We want to create an environment in which they can express their emotions safely. We want them to be absolutely physically safe, that they are not going to hurt themselves or hurt anybody else, and nobody else is going to hurt them. And we ensure their cultural care and safety, that they can be who they are, speak their language, be able to work within their traditions, and feel safe in that environment. Next one. We work with a supervisor. Now, let me stop here too just for a second. I think in many ways, people get very kind of upset about the idea of working what is typically translated as under supervision, which to my mind smacks of snoopervision. We don't have supervisors. And that's why I put mentor or coach up there, that we can try and reframe what it is. Supervision is core to our practice. That's the reason why we want it, not for somebody who can supervise whether we've done the right report or whether we've filed things under the right letter. Supervision is about personal development. It is about professional development. It is about debriefing after some really difficult experience. And those difficult experiences happen in community, happen in families, happen in schools, happen in residential care, and particularly secure care. Very difficult situations. We need to be able to go and debrief on that, get support on that, get guidance on that. And supervisors don't sit in their office and kind of have this glorified role of, I'm the supervisor and you will come and report to me. Supervisors in child and youth care work should be there, present in the environment so that they can step in if they need to. They can model something different if they need to. They can support the child and youth care worker if they need to. They are there for the child and youth care worker, not for the children, because the child and youth care worker, hopefully, is able to work with a child. So we need supervisors. I can't remember a time when I practiced without a supervisor. And wonderful supervisors, mentors, coaches who I was able to learn from. And it's important for us to have that. The work that we do is hard, particularly when we are trying to be therapeutic in situations where children are actually behaving in ways that make us want to slap them silly. And we can't do that. We have to be therapeutic. But the effort it takes, the strain on us, the complexity of it all requires that we have someone safe to talk to, somewhere to go to debrief, somewhere who says, how are you doing as a child and youth care worker? What have you learned today? This is something that you might like to try differently. That's why we have supervisors. And when we don't have them, we can struggle. Right, next point comes up, and this is an important one. All of the above is complex work that requires a depth of knowledge and skill and self-development gained over years of study and practice. You might think this all looks really simple when it comes at you on slides. This is very challenging work. I think it is one of the hardest jobs in the world to do really great child and youth care work. And we need the knowledge and skill as well as our own self-development to do it. Not because we want to be obsessed with qualifications. Again, I think we can get skewed into that direction. It's not about have you got this degree or have you got that degree. The reason why we have child and youth care work education is because our work is tough, is because we need the knowledge and skill, or we are likely to hurt a child or children. So, no. This thing of you can just come in and learn as you go experiment with children as you go. Do this work. No, you cannot do therapeutic work with troubled, hurting children who are bleeding inside without the depth of knowledge and skill and without your own self-development. Next one. Now we go to the other set of wings, right? We've done the therapeutic side. We're doing this piece. And I'm so sorry, this is probably taking much too long. And we've had delays, but I'll try to move as fast as I can through this. Now we come to the other set of wings, and that is child and youth development work. Okay, let's go. Next one. A child and youth care worker's position in the daily life of a young person or their family allows him or her to intervene proactively, responsively, and immediately to help the young person and or other family members to learn new ways of acting and experiencing the world. In order for a child to learn new ways of acting and experiencing the world, we do child and youth development. Next slide. Care work involves facilitating and supporting the development of competency, well-being, resilience, and strength of each individual child in their everyday context through positive, healthy experiences, which can last for a moment or for several hours. Positive, healthy experiences, which we then use. We're working in the experience with young people. But that's what we want to get to. And this statement gives you the reason why we don't fix kids, why that is not part of child and youth care work, because this is what we do in child and youth care work. Every time a child has an experience that is positive and healthy, and if we have enabled that experience in the way that we should, their competency should have increased, their well-being should have increased, their resilience should have increased, and they should have been able to use their strengths and grow their strengths. And by the way, when we talk about strengths, we are not talking about whether they play soccer well or whether they play the piano or whatever. We're talking about internal personal strengths, or what we have also learned to know as character strengths. Those strengths that make us who we are and that we need to express every day, because as we express them, we develop our competency and we become actually stronger human beings, and that's what we want. And it also ends up building resilience. Okay, keep going. And to do that, to get to these positive, healthy experiences, we intentionally use fun and play to increase social and emotional learning. We are present in that play. Okay, this is where we're not watching, we're present. Fun and play is absolutely crucial to development. In fact, it's a lesson that we now should have learned from research, that young people learn more from play than from going to school. And we really need to, the children we work with need fun. So do we. You know what? The more fun we're involved in, the better the job is for us. Fun and play should be a huge part of what we do. And it's within the fun and play that we create the positive, healthy experiences. If we're not in there, by the way, guys, then no, we have no opportunity to build positive, healthy experiences, because right in the middle of the play, someone will smack somebody else, and then it will turn into no more fun. So we're in there using it to build the experience. We give multiple opportunities to participate in activities such as sport, designed activities, culture, which might come from an individual development plan after an assessment, cultural events, programs, which also might come from an IDP that's developed after an assessment. And we actively participate to facilitate that these activities are great experiences and strengthen young people. If young people come out of them the same way they went into them, hurting and unhappy, or come out having deteriorated, there's something wrong with what we're doing. And so on that note, I can't help but say, and I don't know if they're government people on this, but I hope you, if you are, you hear me. The programs that have been set up under government for children and youth in residential settings and in secure care are appalling. They are packaged programs such as anger management and a few others, probably nicely packaged, but they are packaged and they are run as these 8 programs every, I don't know how many weeks, let's say 6 weeks a program lasts. Well, every 6 weeks, the next one starts, and then they get repeated. And a child who spends 3 years in there has repeated the same program over and over again. And somehow we think that's what we should be doing. I will never forget sitting next to a young person that I was talking with as we did the investigation. And he said to me, "Ma'am, I beg you, please, can you help me? I have such problems in controlling my anger. I don't know what to do with it. And it keeps on getting me into trouble. I've been through the anger management program 6 times, and I don't feel that I have any idea how to manage my anger." Package programs that we put children through like a sausage machine are absolutely not child and youth care work. Next slide. We use every opportunity to facilitate that young people can practice doing things differently. Because if they can, and they then experience themselves differently, they will feel differently about themselves. And guess what? They'll behave differently. Practice doing things. I am a big fan of Michael Durant's work, and I love the way that he talks about children being able to practice being different. And so instead of asking them to do things perfectly, when it's practice, like we send a child off to practice soccer, they will make mistakes. They will kick the ball in the wrong direction. They will potentially even kick the ball into somebody else's face. They won't know where the goalposts are. But through practice, they eventually get to know where those goalposts are, and they kick the ball through it. And they love it when they do, because they become successful. And when they're successful, they experience themselves as being a successful, strong human being, and they feel differently about it. And they're then able to behave differently. So practice, we're practicing to be different. Children and youth that we work with must be given these opportunities to practice doing things differently. Okay, next one. We use everyday life events and care routines to provide developmental support. So that kind of also captures this thing that we keep on talking about. We work in the life space of young people. This whole life space thing comes from the concept that we work in everyday life events. In other words, we're kind of there when kids go off to school, or we are able to spend time having a meal with them. We're there if we're in residential care when they go to bed. We're there when they're off to sport. We're there when they're doing their homework, etc. We're there when they come home from school wanting to tear up their books, and so on. Care routines are an incredibly important component of child and youth care work. And it doesn't matter whether you're in residential care or not. Can everybody switch off their mics, please? We use everyday life events. So we don't really need to construct everybody's life, and we don't sit with them in an office. We actually are part of their everyday life, and so we actually can use whatever happens. And sometimes we don't know what a day is going to look like. We don't know what events are happening, but we're actually able to use them because we're there. Care routines are specifically things such as wake up, dress, go off to school, eat, come back, spend the afternoon, eat, prepare for bed, go to bed. That is kind of the process that every young person goes through every day. Doesn't matter where they are. And if possible, we try to make sure that at those times we are there and present and able to use them constructively. It drives me crazy, a little bit more crazy than I typically am, when I see again a child and youth care worker who's put a plate of food in front of young people and is having their food at the back of a hall, all on their own, while they watch children eat. There is the most amazing potential to teach, to encourage, to get kids to express their strengths in being present at meal times with children, whether it's sitting on a rock eating a sandwich, or it's sitting in a residential center in the dining room with kids at their table, talking with them, hearing what their day is like. So we use care routines. They are not things to watch. They are some of the tools that we actually use. Next point. Doing all of the above requires knowledge, skill, self-development, and it's gained through study and practice. It does not necessarily require as much depth of knowledge and skill as the therapeutic component, but it does require knowledge and skill. It may look easy, it is not easy. So we need to know how to do it. Next slide. Back to the butterfly. Just keep going with it. So we are now clear that care work is both therapeutic work and child and youth development, connected through relationship. Just keep going with the, and they are done together. So that is where it all becomes so much more complex, because we don't kind of say, okay, honey, now's your therapeutic time. We're going to do da 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 da. Oops, now we've done our therapeutic, let's go off and do our child and youth development piece. We do these things together. They are integrated and they are contextualized in relationship. So anybody who thinks that our child and youth care work is such an easy kind of we just care for kids thing, well, I hope by now, as we finish this off, you understand how complex our work is, how wonderful it is if we can do it well, that it is delicate and beautiful, and that it is something we are immensely proud of when we do it the way we should be doing it. Next slide. Actually, just run through this, please, because we're a bit late. I just gave you the keywords. If anybody wants to know what the keywords are for articulating child and youth care work, I've just pulled them out of my presentation, and there's a few of them that you can just look at. Okay, next slide. Child and youth care work is, I thought I might just pull this all together in one little sentence. Therapeutic child and youth development while being fully present with children and youth in their everyday life to respond to their inner pain and increase their competencies, resilience, and strengths. Next slide. So, to honor you as child and youth care workers, and in fact, all the professionals that are attending this webinar, the work that we do is sometimes really, really tough. These children that we work with are so wonderful, but they can also be exhausting. Our job is sometimes very, very hard to do, particularly if we get paid almost nothing and we come to the end of our day feeling like we've just had a rough time. So our job is tough, but I want to encourage you as we end off with this. Put up the next piece, please. You never know whether a young person you are working with will be our world's future and much needed Gandhi, Mother Teresa, or Nelson Mandela. Go on. Work well with them, even under the worst of circumstances. Next slide. Next. Because you never know. There endeth my lecture, or my chat, or my speech, whatever. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Lesley. Let's give our guest speaker a big round of applause as she helped us to touch base again and getting back to basics of child and youth care work. We will now have a session where we would like to ask a few people if they've got any questions, to raise their hands, and then we will allow you to post your questions. But we also had a few people who have already make a few comments there in the chat box. I'm just waiting to see if there's any hands up yet. Not yet. I'm gonna ask Azeni and Donald just to reflect for us any of the issues raised there, a few comments, and then we will take. I saw a hand and then it moved away again.
Perhaps we can take the presentation down.
Okay. Okay, we've got Miriam there that would like to ask a question, and then Nontombeko, Lambo. Let's give there two of them, and then we will, and then there's Sheila. Only the three people first, as I have mentioned your names. We'll start with you, Miriam.
My hand is not up.
Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Let's go then to Nontombeko. Beko.
Yes.
Yes.
This is just to say thank you first, Lesley, for this informative presentation. And I'll just to quickly reflect on what you said when what you spoke about when Merle said if we can't articulate what child in need care worker is. That's a very important point. And I like the fact that you raised it up in this presentation, because in this platform, I believe there's a lot of, I would say, new child and youth care workers that are in our program, and it's something that in Isibindezi Koleni program that focuses in being in a school setting. It's one of the main issues when we orientate the new child and youth care workers into the field and into the work that we do, that we stress over, that it's quite important for us to be able to articulate what child and youth care worker is and what child and youth care worker work is not, especially if we're going to go into a setting with other professionals, and it's quickly to I would say just bypass childcare for, or mistake childcare for social work and any other profession when we are in other spaces where other professionals exist. So I'll just to thank you, Lesley, for the presentation, and just thank you for those words and that emphasis on the importance of us child and youth care workers being able to articulate what a child and youth care worker is. So thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Sheila then.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Lesley. I thoroughly enjoyed the information that was given to us. Yeah, it was very informative. I think for me, it was almost like, again, a refresher workshop that you have given me. I think, however, the one thing that stood out for me, especially even the the pictures that you put up with the kids and the bleeding of kids and stuff like that, that was for me quite interesting. And so many times we as the child and youth care workers, we tend to focus more on the behavior of the child, and you don't see the very child. You don't you don't do that thing where you put the hand just there on the child's face, or just because sometimes we get so caught up in what is currently happening, the chaos, and then we forget the child that we work with. So that for me was thoroughly, it was quite nice, it was interesting. And the other thing that I wanted to speak about is the part of the senior child and youth care worker, that sometimes forget the role that they're supposed to be playing. And what I've even today with what you said, that they are there for the child and youth care workers more, and more than what they're supposed to be for the child, because so many times child and youth care workers are pushed aside, especially when things is going crazy, when we focus this over and over, the challenging behavior, and you need to just put out fires all the time, and it makes you tired as a child and youth care workers. Then that is the time when you're supposed to need that senior child and youth care worker that is just going to be there as that support person, the person that is going to just hold you and just allowing you to breathe. And most of the sometimes they're not there. So for me, as seniors, I think this was a eye-opening. I think we, if there were seniors, senior child and youth care workers in this group, it's something that senior child and youth care workers need to understand, that their role is there for support as a child and youth care worker. But other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed the workshop. Thank you very much. It was very good. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lesley, would you like to respond on the first two people? Is there anything specific you want to highlight?
No, I think Elwyn, they made excellent points, and I think they were reflecting on the presentation. So I think we can move on.
Yeah, thank you. I've got 3 more hands that if when you're done, please lower your hand. And can I ask you that you be brief in terms of your comment or question, as we would like to give more people a chance. I've got Nontom Bentley, Ada, and then Mpo, in that order. To then just pose your questions. You may unmute.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. My name is Dombentle Kona from KZN Greenfields Child and Youth Care Center. You know, it was a very informative session. Thank you very much for NACCW to even arrange such, and also the commitment to go on with these webinars. What really stood out for me was, you know, that focuses that our work is therapeutic, and also that it's child care development as well. You know, it was giving, you know, the explanation. It was such a refresher in a way that it's like you are coming into the field for the first time, and the zeal, and you know, the way it was explained, and also giving, you know, the use of everyday life events and the care routines, you know, being able to go down there to prioritize and understand the meaningful and the impact that it has on these young people. You know, for me, and I'm sure with our fellow colleagues as well, it's just it was it's like a fresh breath, you know, going back to our work and reviving our zeal and energy in working and ensuring that these children, they are treated as they should be and as how they are in their life best work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. The next one is Mpo.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and it's good. I'm glad to be here. And also the things that I'm hearing, it's like I'm taken back to 1996 during those times of the transformation of the child and youth care system. And I'm glad to be here because you have reconfirmed what I thought childcare was. And when in 1996 I was involved, you know, in childcare, I learned a lot. And then when I went back to childcare, I expected, you know, to kind of see to learn more again. But the things now that are kind of upgraded, like for instance, I heard now that, you know, we do not do life space and behavior management, of which those are the things that we said at that time that we do. So I expected to learn something different when I came back to childcare. And then I was very surprised, and I'm still shocked. I have not recovered actually from that shock that I discovered that, you know, childcare in some places is practiced as pre-1994, like having children of another culture being placed in a school of another culture, or a child who has been homeschooled and being placed, you know, in a language that this child was not taught in, and even to the point of failing the grade. So I was really shocked to see and, you know, evidence those things happening, and you're asking yourself with these things, because these things were happening pre-1994, and then we had 1996, and after 30 years, you still find that childcare is in a way, as you said, that, you know, this is what childcare is, this is not what childcare is. And you even said that, you know, we do not thumbsuck. I remember being told that, you know, I must wait and see what the culture is in this organization instead, because I came with that 1996 mindset. And I was told that, you know, wait and see how they do things here. So really, but I'm glad that you reconfirmed the mindset. I still have that. It's still the same. It's that mindset. Thank you.
Thank you, Mpho. ADA, oh, I see you've lowered your hand. Still want to comment? You may unmute. Okay, let's go then. Miriam, I see your hand is now up. We'll give you a chance.
Yes,
Before you may
Elwin.
lower your hand. Yes, Miriam?
Yes, Elwin, my hand is up now. And I just wanted to thank Lesley for emphasizing drawing from other fields, but specifically about the role of neuroscience in the curriculum, because then if we are academics in the field of child and youth care, we've got to convince other academics that we know our stuff and our stuff is researched and it is also scientific. And so, Lesley, this speech is speaking to us as academics that we need to also be sure that we indigenize our curriculum so that we are able to make it relevant to the context. And those are the 2 points that I really liked when Lesley raised them. And just to say to maybe the field and to everyone who is here, we are now seeing an increase in the publications in terms of child and youth care work, because Lesley, now we have gone to the point where we are having now a master's degree in child and youth care. And we are now at a place in academia where we want to stretch ourselves, where we want other universities to also take up child and youth care without being held by issues of sustainability and the economy. The world of academia has got to start embracing child and youth care, both in South Africa and in Africa. And for the child and youth care workers who are there, I'm saying to them, please keep your head high and be proud in the multidisciplinary team and speak child and youth care knowledge with confidence, because after this lecture or after this speech, you have the professional identity.
Thank you, Miriam. We've got Mel and Alfred, but maybe we will give Lesley a chance if she would like to respond before we take 2 more questions.
No, I hope I'm not just being lazy, but what I'm hearing is commentary
Yes.
and so on. And I think everybody who's speaking in a way is making their own points as well, which I think is very rich. So I think we just keep going unless it's a very specific question, in which case I absolutely will answer. But if it's comments that people want to make, then everything's valuable. So fantastic. Keep going.
Thank you, Lesley. We will now give Mel, and then after Mel, Alfred Harris a chance to comment or put their questions. Mel, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to Lesley for a very heartfelt presentation that combined a sense of why we come into this field for me and the knowledge that we need to know about it. And I'm just admiring of the fact, Lesley, that after all of these years in the field, your heart is still open to children. and very much open to children, because I think that over time, we often become a little bit jaded. And I really wanted you to comment on that. You talked about child and youth care workers having to be with the pain of children. If one is responding to somebody attacking you with a sense of, I recognize your pain, we have to very much then be open to our own pain and be emotionally very available and sensitive. And yet, many child and youth care workers, I think, find themselves working in environments in which they are not treated with basic respect, even as workers often. Never mind as child and youth care workers, who I think ought to have a special place in the world of workers for the exposure that they have to trauma through other people's trauma. So I just wondered if you can please comment on that. I know that's in itself a commentary, but I'd really like your opinion on that matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. We will just give Alfred a chance and then Lesley will respond. Alfred.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Lesley, for a very, very insightful presentation. And I think one of the statements that you previously made was that people don't see good child and youth care, and that is why they don't value the work of child and youth care work. And I think what I've seen here today is that it has taken me back to exactly what Impo was saying, is to say that when we are in the field and we are practicing child and youth care work, and we do it with the compassion that we came into the field with, people, children will begin to experience themselves differently, and people will be able to sit up and to see that this work is not just work that is done by everybody, but it takes people who actually come in with knowledge, but most importantly with compassion, and be able to, as Mo said, to hold the pain of young people. Thanks.
Thank you. Lesley, over to you.
Okay. I think it's quite a complex thing to answer, and I think I'm just going to use myself as a bit of an example. But I do think that one of the key things to us being present in the pain and being able to cope with that is proper supervision. The real deal is where there is always a safe space and a safe place and a safe person to engage with, because it's a very fine balance between getting your own pain in the child's way and being able to be with them in their pain. If your pain gets mixed up with their pain, things can get very serious or can go very seriously wrong. But I think if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to empathize and in the real way that empathy is meant to have, and it comes back to that word compassion as well. It's that deep sense of, I want to know you, I want to understand, and I'm willing to hold that pain. But the key here is holding the pain and not absorbing the pain, which is very hard to do. I do think for those child and youth care workers, and I include myself, we can so easily become traumatized ourselves by our experiences with young people. It is a very hard thing to see children suffer. And in our work, we inevitably are working with the suffering children. And so it is very, very hard work to do. And it is important that we do not become or end up with secondary trauma ourselves, especially for those who have been impacted by the policies and approaches such as apartheid, and in Canada, for example, the way in which the Indigenous people of Canada have been treated, Australia, and we could probably go through every country in Africa as well, and a lot of other countries around the world, and say that there have been systems that have traumatized people. And I believe very strongly in intergenerational trauma, where the trauma is not just felt by the people who have directly gotten traumatized, but also by the next generation and potentially at least 3 generations. And that trauma is not necessarily something identified, but it comes out in the way we live our lives or the things we do, and so on. So I think understanding trauma and intergenerational trauma and being able to work with children who are traumatized or are in pain requires us to have the skill, because I think one of the dangerous things is if we, for example, have been traumatized and we're working with traumatized children and we don't have the skill, we end up using strategies that are most unhelpful to children. From my own perspective, I think I stay with that pain. I live with that pain all the time. And in some ways, I am a perfect example of having absorbed some of that pain of what children have experienced. And it was, Canada was an experience for me that reignited in the most profound way what we can do to children to harm them and the impact that it has. Other than being the Director General of a ministry, I actually worked with Indigenous people for 5 years purely on healing processes with regard to residential schools. And I'm not going to explain all of that if we do, it takes a bit of time, but hundreds of people who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, who were severely abused and traumatized as children through the system of government and what was done to them, and listening to them. And at one point I asked myself, what the hell am I doing working with 70-year-olds? I'm actually a child and youth care worker. And I struggled with it until the day that it dawned on me that as people poured out their pain, I was able to say, you were children. They would blame themselves, hate themselves for what they've done, how they've done it, for the harm that did to their own children, for the fact that they ignored other children who are being beaten in front of them, for the fact that they actually beat children themselves, that they heard children screaming in pain as they were abused but did nothing. And I could repeat to them, you were children. And then I could explain what happens to children when they suffer. And so I was able to bring my child and youth care work right into a situation which was actually dealing with the elderly, one of which I am. So I think for me, that has actually increased my understanding and compassion and responsiveness to the pain that children suffer. And it's why I actually feel almost permanently angry when I see child and youth care workers use their positions to abuse children, to hurt children. And it's probably a handful across the country in the bigger scheme of things. But every child we hurt is potentially going to be in the next generation will be hurt as well, and so on. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Mel, but I think we have to allow ourselves to be in that space of pain. We can then go away and find the person that we can cry with. Sometimes when I was doing the work, and even when I was working directly, and today, believe it or not, I'm back to working directly with young people, there are times when you want to cry with them. And I did. I cried in Canada with people who had been hurt. But then there's also the space where you actually go away from that and you talk to somebody who is not directly impacted, and you have someone who can hold you and can hold your pain. And the problem with not having people who care about child and youth care workers in this country is that many of us are actually operating alone. And we feel embarrassed to share how hurtful it is. We don't have somebody to debrief after we've just had a chair thrown at us, or language that has gone on and on. We don't have that. And that is a shame on the system in South Africa. Shame on the government. It is time for government to wake up, and shame on government for the kind of treatment not only towards child and youth care workers, but towards children. And so what we end up in a system where from the top down, adults are hurt, then children get hurt. And we can't actually afford that. And I can only hope that somewhere, probably not in my lifetime, something changes absolutely radically, that we actually recognize that we work in a field of pain. And if we don't do our work well, and if government doesn't create systems that work well for child and youth care workers and for children, the damage ultimately will be profound. And some of the people, in fact, I suspect a large number of people in South Africa, in Africa, and in the countries where there has been abuse, and you are actually indigenous or you are Black, African, and I include everybody of color. If you have been abused yourself or have experienced intergenerational trauma, and you then work in a situation where somebody from the top actually demands that you do certain things, or you yourself will be punished and lose your job, I find that unforgivable of a government. And so I think it is a very tough job that we do, because, other adults can speak for themselves, but children cannot speak for themselves. And so we have to speak for them, and we have to be the people who can carry that pain. But if we don't have self-care, if we don't have the care from other people and the safeness to actually express that, then we get more damaged. And damaged people working with children are not the people that should be doing it. I don't believe in the idea of wounded warriors. I think we have to be warriors. The wounded part of us needs to be held by somebody else with us, just as we hold the child's pain. But we can't take our pain and put it into our hands and then say to the child, put yours in with it, because that is asking for very unhappy stuff. But we have to care about ourselves, or we cannot care for children. Mark Kruger, one of the professors who taught me, had this saying, and he wrote a book on it. And if you can get hold of it and read it, I think it's wonderful. Careless to caring. for child, and it was basically about how careless people can be about caring for child and youth care workers. So care has to come to the child and youth care workers as well. Supervisors have a profound role to play, but we don't need snoopvisors. That doesn't work in our system. Okay. Merle, I've no idea if I've answered your question, but I've shared what I think I can share with you.
Thank Mr. Chair, if I just may respond, thank you very much, Lesley. I think you have fully answered it, actually. And I find myself sitting here thinking we need to recommit as NACCW and maybe as the professional board as well, not that I can speak for them, but to the idea of trying to promote supervision, child and youth care work supervision in our country, because I think we're not doing that part of our work as well as we wanted to do it. That we had an idea that we could bring in a different kind of, as you say, supervision, not snoopervision, that kind of supportive, emotional work that people can do with child and youth care workers. And I think we need to recommit to that. So thank you very much for your response.
Thank you, Mel. We've come to the end of our webinar session. I'm not sure if, Donald, if there's any specific comments that you would highlight, or if everything has been summarized. Donald, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. And thanks so much to Lesley for this excellent presentation. I think that the presentation spoke to people, all of us, including those that are working directly with children on a daily basis. And I agree that it's a refresher for each one of us. A few points that were raised, and I'm not going to go into details due to time. A point that was raised by a few was around the literature. It came from Professor Mazibuko, who wanted to know if there is literature based on on some of the points made from the presentation. And then people asked about the CPD points. Yes, please do leave your names, your contact numbers, as well as your registration number with council. There was a point on supervision, which I think that it was very well articulated. And there was also a request that this presentation could be shared. I am sure that, Lesley, you can confirm if we can make the presentation available to the attendees. But I think the rest has been covered. So, and I don't think that I should just go through them one by one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald, for sharing that with us. At this point, we would like to then conclude our session and want to say thank you to all those who joined us in this webinar, our first for 2025. And those that we have mentioned from FITSE Africa, the South African Council of Social Service Professions, Social Development Departments, our members of the NEC, child and youth care workers that joined in, and social workers, as well as our directors and staff from the NACCW that took the time to be with us this afternoon for a very good and profound, as people have mentioned there in the comments, presentation. And we would share and want to say thank you very much, Lesley, for your time and for taking us back again to say what is the importance of the child and youth care work profession, so that we can be able to also articulate and share with others in the community, wherever we are in our settings, what we do. I think you have highlighted for us and reminded child and youth care workers that this is a very challenging profession, because what was outstanding for me is, and what I take away from today is that we should be able to see the child bleeding inside. And if we can understand and work with that, then we are ready to respond in a therapeutic and developmental way. So thank you for highlighting that particular things, and thank you for being our coach and mentor and supervisor in the field of child and youth care, and still be with us and around us as we need to embrace and hear what is the good work that we are doing, but it's also a challenging work. Thank you once again, and to all of those that were with us. Thank you. Maybe a last word from you, Lesley?
No, thank you to everyone. Thank you so much. I think I've said enough, and I really appreciate the opportunity and just wish everybody well. Take care.
Thank you, good people. And at this note, we will then declare this session closed. We have webinars on a monthly basis, and just watch the space as we announce and share the links for you to join, and be like the good disciples. Like Grandma said, when you find something good, we must go and share it so that we can have more child and youth care workers that can join and learn about good practice. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Chairperson.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Halle's. Oh, shame. I could hear that it was you were struggling a bit. Are you ill? Yeah, yeah. But Yeah, we all a bit ill at this stage between the ears. Yeah, no, thank you very much, Les. Thank you very much. I think that I think it was really important, and I think people stayed very present with it, judging by the comments. You know, obviously people take things at different levels, but I think there was people were engaged, so that's really lovely.